So, VTubers. You know, the anime-looking things that come in many forms, of there being a VTuber based on almost every animal, every mythical beast, and now apparently every food item, in which it is still being debated if these so-called food tubers count as actual VTubers, and if that is true, that means that the first ever VTuber was the annoying orange. So do with that information what you will. But it's been some time since I've spoken about VTubers. I've been off this black tar heroin for months now, and it's time to relapse again. Yes, it's time to talk about the virtual content creators where most female avatars in the space have proportions that either defy the laws of physics or look like something straight out of My 300 Pound Life, where most of the calories are predominantly stored in their chest. It's getting to the point now where I'm beginning to wonder if these VTubers are taking a page out of a specific type of fairies book.
That actually goes kind of hard though. I like that.
And stereotypically, they are very insistent they don't have a significant other, which is a tale as old as time. Oh, that male voice you heard in the background? That didn't happen, that was just you hallucinating. Now make sure your copium supplies are stocked up for tonight's stream, and make sure you've done your homework on the fan-made VTubing ovulation tracker, which was created based on the offhand comments the VTubers had made, which helped them calculate the exact day that VTuber had their period.
They posted tweets of me saying, ow, my tummy hurts, tummy hurt. Guys, that is me preeing a fat dookie. Like, that is me preeing a dump.
Note to self, do not piss off a VTuber fan or I might be involuntarily added to the male fertility tracker. But VTubing has come a long way since it first started, from what most thought initially would have been a passing trend, to in the current day cementing itself on the internet as a genre of content that is here to stay. And it's easier than ever to become a VTuber if you can afford the price of a down payment on a house, if you want a decent model. It's almost got to the point where they are putting the fairies to shame with these prices, and that's probably because with VTubing being so popular now, it's also led to a rise in things related to it, like the price of commissions, and things like controversies, probably due to there being so many VTubers now and such a variety of personalities, to say the least.
No.
Listen up now.
No.
Bridging.
No.
OpenAI said.
No.
So let me explain how.
No!
Into strategic reserve. On-chain. Hyperbridge protocol.
Is this a joke? No!
But with there being so many VTubers now and it being more accessible than ever, essentially meaning almost anyone can become a VTuber nowadays, and because of this it would only be natural for controversies to occur within the space, and there has been quite a lot just these past few years alone. From VTubers having quarrels with their own communities, to an entire library's worth of Google Docs being published exposing other VTubers. I'm still hoping one day we move away from Google Docs and format exposes in Excel spreadsheets instead, to major corporations built around VTubing crumbling to the ground. But today I wanted to look at some VTubers that behind the guise of an avatar said or did some things that either destroyed the platform they had, or after everything was said and done, their name would only be regarded with infamy, or in one case would end with someone being arrested. But who are these VTubers and what did they do?
Have you ever stopped to think that those cute and quirky VTubers you watch might be more than just entertaining digital personalities? What if I told you they're actually part of a government conspiracy to convince the public that women are real?
So obviously we are going to start with a gentle pegging and then slowly work our way up, with the first VTuber on this list possibly being the most tame in comparison to the others. ChaChaChilla is a small self-proclaimed princess VTuber that has the appearance of a chinchilla, which is like a fat rat. But even though they were small in size, they would cause a drama that would blow up and make their name known throughout the internet, all down to, in my opinion, the most petty reason. And looking at their track record, it might be safe to say they are the Amber Heard of VTubing. So around November 2025, there was a Minecraft server known as the EeveeA SMP, named after the SOX agency, which is a VTubing agency with multiple talents. But despite not being a part of the agency, ChaCha and a bunch of other VTubers were welcome to join the server. And the server was known to be heavily roleplay orientated, where the VTubers would take on characters and interact with each other as said characters. Think of it like a more casual version of GTA RP.
Well, I do miss you.
Miss you too, baby, but yeah.
Okay. I hope it's not too long, because I don't want to wait too long to have sex.
gonna be 7 days.
7 days.
Things on the Minecraft server were rather peaceful. It was just a bunch of big and small VTubers role-playing and having fun. But obviously, things wouldn't be that way for long. On the 18th of November, Chilla would make a public tweet they would later delete, calling out the SOX VTuber agency and members of the agency such as Flock and Adfree, claiming that these parties were essentially endorsing ableism and making light of her disability, and she would attach a 3-second clip to that tweet where there was a role-playing event months prior to this involving a team going against another team, and one of the members of the team going against ChaChaChilla's team referred to them as inferior.
Almost died in the first like 2 minutes.
They're inferior, we're just better. That's what they're saying there.
ChaCha also claimed that when she tried to talk about this to Flock, he would block her and tell her not to bring up personal issues with his talent. Now immediately off rip, people were not on her side, and that post would actually get quickly community noted, saying she was wrong. Because not only was this event months ago and she was only bringing this up now, but it was also a bit of a stretch to call people ableist for saying this and assuming she was the one targeted out of everyone else on her team. Eventually Flock, one of the people called out in the post, would respond, saying they already spoke about this, a group actually reviewed this claim and found no wrongdoing, and he had already told her not to contact him anymore. She would then respond to this saying, actually, you didn't tell me to stop messaging you, and then leaks DMs showing messages that clearly show him saying he was uncomfortable talking to her. All in all, people just thought she was bringing this up for no reason or to simply cause drama or be a victim, especially after the situation was looked at and reviewed months ago. But apparently it's not the only time she did something like this, because they apparently had multiple VTubing personas. When they were first Nyan Cherise, they apparently did the same thing there and was claimed to harass people. Then they moved on to Bunny Alisu, which had even worse allegations like doxing and revenge porn, and after all of that, they eventually became ChaChaChilla. But by this point, nobody believed Cha-Cha and she would apologise. She then claimed she's going to the hospital, providing a picture of which many would claim was fake, and she wouldn't provide verification when asked. She then goes on to try and prove that the people making accusations about her previous personas, specifically the VTuber Apollo, claiming they are lying, but with all the screenshots provided, some were thought to be fake. To this day, months later, she is still claiming to be a victim, still talking about the situation, and still obtaining community notes like they were on a fire sale.
You're my little
So Gumpai is a name that is somewhat well known within the VTuber community, but not for a good reason. She's someone we spoke about before like a year ago, but obviously things got a lot worse since then, like a lot worse. But if you don't know, Gumpai was a VTuber that was just a bit unhinged.
I fucking hate streaming. I fucking hate streaming and VTubing. I hate VTubers. VTubers have ruined my life. Every unfunny female VTuber who replies to my tweets deserves to get by a sledgehammer. I'm gonna buy a sledgehammer on Temu. I'll make sure it's wrapped in microplastics, and I will wrap that sledgehammer around it. I will fucking them.
You're my little
Gumpai was a dog VTuber that debuted in September of 2024, and she quite quickly developed a loyal following, primarily because her content was made up of two things. One, she was a so-called girl failure with a mental illness, which was probably attractive to her audience at the time because they thought they could fix her or they related to her. And two, her content focused on the so-called girlfriend experience, which is a term mainly used in the adult industry, but in the streaming space it often translates to the streamer farming a parasocial relationship with their audience like they are dating them.
I'm rubbing my tummy. Do you hear it? Do you hear it? I'm rubbing my tummy.
Fucking internet.
But the result of this is often the streamer being showered with gifts by their audience because the streamer is directly feeding into the illusion that they share some form of relationship, even though the viewer probably knows nothing about the personal life of said streamer. And Gumpai played into this hard, like too hard. She heavily insisted that she was actually dating her viewers to the extent that if they were talking to any other female or had a relationship, they were cheating on her. And they were not even allowed to speak about any other females in things like her Discord. She also took tributes from her fans. By tributes, I don't mean money or items of value, I mean things like cum tributes. Which is where, you know what, I'm not even going to explain this, go f*** yourself. On her Tumblr page that has now been deleted, you can find under her commonly asked questions, a line saying her fans can send her anything, and I mean anything, including intimate pictures with examples like peni pics and said tributes, and she was more than happy to receive them, even saying she was going to archive them. You know, to each their own, someone out there is probably happy their favourite VTuber or Oshi has a picture of their cocktail sausage somewhere on their SSD. But funny enough, this wasn't what made her so controversial in the space. And I would argue that in some communities like VTubing, this type of behaviour isn't rare, so it didn't ring any alarm bells initially. But the thing that actually did make her known to the wider internet was in November of 2024, when a person was doing a commission for a fan of hers making a plushie of her VTuber model, and they had leftover material, so they asked if anyone else wanted one for a price. And Gumpai saw this and got very angry, thinking this person was using her brand to make a profit and she was getting nothing out of it. Which also led to a number of public tweets shitting on the person and where they come from, but a lot of people were actually on the side of the person who made the plushie, including bigger VTubers. And the tide quickly turned against Gumpai, leading to her crashing out even more. This is the situation that put her on everyone's radar, and it wouldn't make much of an impact on her streaming career. She would go MIA for a bit, but when she came back, she still had an audience waiting for her, probably with a show and tell of their latest tribute they made after saving up for a week. But if she could get away with this in the comments she made, it almost looked like she could get away with anything. Any offhand comment, any racial remark, because her community was loyal and infatuated with her. And probably in their eyes, she could do no wrong. Well, until the curtains of that delusion came crashing down because Gumpai was cheating on her audience. She had an actual boyfriend. In March of 2025, a document would be dropped by a past friend of Gumpai, showing screenshots of their interactions where Gumpai is seen gloating about possibly getting into a relationship with a guy and him playing the manager role for her VTubing career. With this, female VTubers are never going to escape the manager that is actually a boyfriend accusation. There are additional screenshots shown in the document, like her on an alt saying she's falling in love with this person and that she bought him an ASMR dildo. How does that even work? But when this was made public, Gumpai was cooked. It was GG next game for this VTuber. Her audience felt absolutely betrayed, and she would immediately take down all her public profiles, and anything made or posted by Gumpai was wiped clean. It was rumoured that one of her fans after this actually committed, but regarding that, there's no hard evidence. There was only public tweets of them seeming distressed about her having a boyfriend, but that is one of the many unfortunate things that can happen when you feed into such an unhealthy parasocial relationship as a streamer. She did sell off her avatar for around $2,000, of which someone actually bought it not to make a meme out of it, but to preserve it, and she did attempt to rebrand as another VTuber, but obviously with the reputation that followed her, that was unsuccessful. I was going to go over another VTuber story here, but because it's very similar to Gumpai's, I thought I'd just combine them and go through it very quickly. The VTuber Elfinpsyop is someone that cultivated the same audience as Gumpai. She was known to be a girl failure, an alcoholic, a gooner, and having some very controversial opinions. This is one of her posts she was most known for.
I can't do it.
It's the Jews.
It's too difficult.
It's the Jews.
But it's all my fault.
It's the Jews again.
It would later get revealed she was gooning, sending NSFW pictures of herself, and had relationships with people in her audience, specifically the mods of her Discord server, with most of them not knowing the other guys existed and that she was doing the same activities with them. It was also discovered that even though she was very vocal about people that were not white, she herself was one of the people she preached about, and she would Photoshop her pictures to appear as white as possible and not her default skin colour, as she was originally from Pakistan and moved to the UK. It was also revealed that there were underage people in her Discord server where they would be exposed to NSFW material and Elfin would contribute to it. In response to the claim about having relationships with multiple people, she would say she was in a terrible state, they took advantage of her, and she always told them she was not a person to date people. She'd also say she was not grooming the person in her Discord server, and then the victim would respond saying they were not groomed. And then when the NSFW pictures she sent to people privately were being circulated on the internet, she would claim at that time she was not an adult, meaning that when she was sending these files to people, she was knowingly distributing illegal material to people. However, people were hesitant to believe this story at the time because it seemed like a claim she would use to get out of this whole mess. But with this, the NSFW interactions with some of her supporters, apparently even the existence of a boyfriend, and lying about her nationality while some could say preaching against it, this would all result in a lot of her diehard fans abandoning her, and she would quickly delete everything and disappear from the internet.
Honey is such a good girl. Hi, baby girl.
So this is the first male VTuber we're going to be talking about on this list, and probably the only one, because once again, in my opinion, there aren't that many male VTubers compared to female. But just because there's less doesn't mean there's any shortage of controversies surrounding them. Tora Karu was a VTuber that debuted in 2022. His design was said to be a completely normal human that cosplayed as a tiger. Now, Tora's content was kind of like the opposite of the girlfriend experience I described previously, because in his case, it was more like a boyfriend experience.
Punny is such a good girl. Hi, baby girl.
I would be your sugar daddy, on God, no cap, and give you everything that I could possibly.
Emily. I love Emily so much.
Now, Tora would also do NSFW content and was known to act very flirty towards his viewers and other VTubers. But around his 2.0 debut, in his own words, he would attempt to separate the NSFW from his usual content and would attempt to be less flirty, even saying previously he was a lot worse in an interview.
So, starting like when I got my 2.0, I got my, I started using an alt account for NSFW stuff, and on my main account, I very, very rarely am quote unquote down bad or say anything like sexual or flirty or stuff like that, right?
Now, you would assume that, you know, the flirting he was doing on stream with others or with his chat, this was just an act for entertainment purposes. You wouldn't think it was serious or how he behaved off camera. But as it turns out, that assumption would be wrong, and this type of behaviour he exhibited was just the tip of the iceberg. It would actually be much worse and result in over 10 people coming out with their uncomfortable experiences with this VTuber. In March of 2024, the first of many statements regarding Tora's behaviour would be released. This was made by a fellow VTuber named Lily, and in this document she would talk about her personal experience with Tora. These two were initially well acquainted. They met through a mutual friend's Discord server, and Tora was one of the people that were there for her when she was going through a breakup. At the time, it was stated Tora was showing some interest in Lily, but there would be problems preventing them from progressing to that point. A year after meeting, there was a discussion of a group trip to Anime Expo 2023. This included both Tora, Lily, and others. When Tora heard Lily was going to be there, he supposedly became excited and started to make advances towards Lily. This included allegedly sending unsolicited dick pics, requesting pictures, sexual comments like how he would masturbate to her streams, and he made it known he wanted to do things when they met. Now, Lily did say she felt uncomfortable by these advances, but because of him previously helping her with their breakup and at the time having some feelings for him, she wouldn't outright shut down these advances. When it came to the trip, on the second day they would eventually meet, and he would allegedly state he had no interest in doing anything because there was somebody else he was interested in. This is something she would say she was relieved to hear, but was upset that he led her on for months prior and pressured her into doing things, making it seem like he wanted her. The two at the end of the day would go to an Airbnb where her friend let the both of them stay because Lily's hotel was over an hour away, and the two of them would sleep on the couch as they were unexpected guests and there wasn't any rooms for them. Whilst trying to sleep on different ends of the couch, it's said that Tora at some point starts making unwanted advances towards Lily, kissing her on the cheek and whispering in her ear, and at this point she was pinned and wanted him off. Unfortunately, because of the commotion, one of the people they were staying with would come check on them, where Tora would then supposedly jump off her. The person didn't notice anything, and Tora even remarked at how creepy the person looked with the lighting and took a picture. After that night, she doesn't recount any other conversation with Tora whilst on the trip. She would confront him months later, but he allegedly brushed her off and thought she was mad because they didn't do anything. She would correct him on this, of which he apologizes and says he will be better, but he still didn't directly address the assault. After this, she doesn't cut contact straight away, as she initially thought she was overreacting because of the way he reacted when she confronted him. Eventually she opens up to others about this and realizes she wasn't overreacting, leading to her cutting him off, cancelling collabs with him and confronting him again, where this time he does somewhat address what happened. And a few weeks later after this, she would release this document, which led many others to come out with their own stories, where similar things happened to them: love bombing, requesting personal information, talking the same way to some VTubers that were underage. He made a list of VTubers he wanted in his harem or to breed with, and even in one instance he sent a whole ASMR video to one of these girls. And before I show this to you, I have to give you a content warning because this is disturbing content, so be warned.
You're such a cutie. I want to kiss you. I love you. I love you, Zenith. You're the best. Glad to become your friend. You're so skilled at art, and you're very cute, and very pretty. I saw your immersion bricks. You really... you really are my type. I'm glad to get to know you a bit better. I like you. Mwah.
Tora made unwanted advances to a lot of people in the space. This was a repetitive pattern. Unfortunately, it took one document to inspire others to come out with their stories. Tora released his own document where he acknowledged some wrongdoing whilst disputing parts of the allegations, but he would say in the same document he was ultimately going to graduate, unlike some of the other VTubers I've mentioned would wipe everything and leave the internet. There is a lot more to this story and what Tora did. This was a basic summary of that. If you want a full look into it, there's a good video by Cipher on it, which helped me with this.
People who play Mercy are not being even remotely respected. I'm not saying, oh, you need to respect us. It's a matter of, we're not even being treated as a human being right now.
EeveeA was someone that previously used to be a fleshy and was a well-known Overwatch streamer, but they would eventually become a VTuber while still primarily creating Overwatch content. They were fairly well known in the Overwatch space, and they were even occasionally recognised by the creators of Overwatch, Blizzard, in one instance getting invited to test out the abysmal dogshit that was Overwatch 2 before launch, and after getting this privilege, even they shat on it. They were also known for being a highly skilled Mercy player, on top of being very open about their identity as a trans woman, where she would regularly talk about her experience with being trans in the Overwatch space. Overall, they were a well-known and somewhat respected member of the Overwatch community. However, in the current day, their reputation is anything but respected. The cracks started to show in 2022, where Eve's girlfriend at the time, May, had allegations of cheating in Overwatch games, being racist, and supposedly talking explicitly to those underage. Now, none of these initial claims are well documented because Reimei wasn't as well known, and in the aftermath everything was deleted, so it's hard to track down anything related to this. But what apparently happened is Reimei gets called out on Twitter, Eve gets involved defending her, saying the person doing this is only doing this to provide a quote-unquote gotcha moment. Her girlfriend only cheated in one game whilst she was off her meds and blackout drunk, and that the DMs leaked of them supposedly talking to those underage were all fake. Once again, this situation wasn't well documented, but it would get brought up again in January of 2023, where Reimei was exposed again for doing the same things, or the same story as before was being reiterated, it's unclear, but there were actually some archived screenshots of this conversation, and once again Eve would go on the defense for her girlfriend, but this time it was collectively agreed that this defense was absolutely terrible, because her excuse for why her girlfriend did these things was because it was a coping mechanism. Yeah. The only way someone would believe that was if you had some Saul Goodman-like lawyer skills, or if you had the ability to Jedi mind trick someone into believing you. But obviously this did not work, and both Reimei and Eve would understandably receive a lot of backlash and see a major hit to their reputation, as this was the primary thing they were known for around this time. Probably after seeing this and seeing the internet wasn't on her side, Eve would make a tweet longer taking a different stance compared to previously, where she would condemn her girlfriend's actions, claiming they are no longer in a relationship, and she would claim she condoned this behaviour because she herself wasn't in the best headspace and wanted to see the best in people, and finally that she should have took people's advice, but that she will change to make sure this doesn't happen again. This response obviously didn't do much of anything. Her reputation was completely in the toilet at this point, but it was about to get 10 times worse, because a few days later a 31-page document would be released not on Reimei's actions this time, but on Eve's. This included testimonies and statements from at least 6 people, several of which were previous partners. Now, there are a lot of allegations in this document, but just to list a few, it said they had a pattern of cheating involving multiple relationships. It was said they were emotionally abusive, manipulative, and regularly baited. They were also said to be hypersexual to the point where they would peer pressure or violate consent, and finally that they themselves was talking inappropriately to those underage. That is just a few of the allegations against them. There are a lot more in the full document, but with this document being released, people were now looking towards Eve to see how she would respond. Would she deny all of this and claim her innocence, or even provide counter evidence to prove them wrong? No, she wouldn't really do anything. She said she was going to respond, but then apparently decided nah, she's not going to, and just deleted or privated a lot of her content and then left the internet. And one of the only things left behind would be people responding to her statement. So the last story I wanted to go over is one that I don't think has been looked into much, primarily because this happened in Japan, so there's a language barrier when looking at the articles discussing it, on top of the fact this happened some time ago and there's been no new updates, and it involves VTubers that were rather small. Also, the evidence that this ties to the VTuber community isn't exactly concrete, so take it with a grain of salt, and just to warn you, I am about to discuss some graphic things, so viewer discretion is advised. But who is this VTuber? Well, it's not just one, it's 2, a male and a female, and behind their VTubing persona, these 2 were actually married. These VTubers were Kurozakura, who was 27 at the time, and his wife, Al Kumamasha, who was 28. I'm just gonna call them Kura and Al because I can't pronounce their names for shit. Now, these 2 weren't your normal VTubers, they were known as VTweeters, where instead of live streaming or creating videos like normal VTubers, they were known to only tweet on the Twitter or X platform, hence the name VTweeter, and their form of content was normally just posting about their lives and occasionally something about their character. Kuro, the male in the relationship, even had his own law. where he was a fox spirit that had fallen into darkness betrayed by his best friend, resulting in him making a contract with a certain alchemist, that alchemist being his wife, the VTuber Al, who posted the same things her husband did, usually things about her day. She didn't really have any lore to her character, it seemed to her husband was a lot more into it than her, but they would occasionally LARP together talking about the darkness, how there's nothing they can do about it, and how he's like Schrödinger's cat, which is a thought experiment involving the quantum superposition principle where something can exist in multiple states at once. But for the clinically brain dead like me, I probably explained that wrong. I'm pretty sure he's just trying to say he's two things at once, like Schrödinger's cat was dead and alive. Now these two seemed like a normal couple, both enjoying this as a hobby. Kuro was working a job that I assume from what he said was working on a farm, and Al was also working whilst trying to find work as an illustrator. From the outside, it seemed like their lives, although heavily work-focused, was somewhat ordinary and satisfactory for them, and it was about to see a big change as Al was now expecting a child, of which they were both happy to announce. However, even if everything appeared normal on the outside, things would quickly change to a more sinister turn around August of 2021. Because even though their relationship appeared happy on the outside, in reality it was anything but. The husband was talking to another woman who was an 18-year-old high school student named Kana Washino, who some have claimed was also a VTuber, but the sources cited show an account that was active in 2023, which wouldn't make sense with what happened next. Now, Kuruma was in contact with this girl for 2 years. Was he cheating? It was never stated, but his wife knew he had contact with her, and because they would speak so much, the wife became extremely jealous. She eventually reached her boiling point in 2021, where to resolve the issue, both the married couple and Kana agreed to meet and sort things out. On the 28th of August, Kana would leave her family home, telling her parents she was meeting her friends and would be back soon. But when she didn't return that night, her parents would alert the police. Shortly after alerting the police, days later, Kana's body was found on a remote property. She had been strangled over a rope and stabbed multiple times. Both Kuro or Sohei Komori and his wife Al or Izumi Komori would be arrested and questioned.
この事件は東京墨田区の高校3年鷲野花夏さんの遺体を山梨県内の物置小屋に遺棄したとして群馬県に住む小森章平容疑者と妻の泉容疑者が逮捕されたものです。
Now when Kana left that day to meet them, there was a conversation where the wife wanted her to no longer contact her husband, but for some reason that is not explained in any of the articles I found, this conversation quickly soured and the wife was not happy. This resulted in the couple taking her against her will to their house where they would begin planning what to do with her, with them in an interview saying, and I quote, "We searched for a place to kill her." They decided to take her to a remote property where they would kill her and then dump her body, and she would be found a few days later. Both would be found guilty. The husband would get 23 years in prison, even though the prosecution argued it should be 25, and the wife would only get 18 years because it was said she played a secondary role in the murder. Now, it isn't documented why they decided to murder her after the conversation. They could have just gone their separate ways, but the Japanese police think it was because the conversation regarding the relationship was going nowhere. Personally, I think, yes, this is coming from a professional idiot and from complete speculation, but I think the husband, despite his wife's wishes, didn't want to cut contact and instead just decided to kill her, but once again, that's just my speculation. But how do we know that this is the VTubers we spoke about earlier? Well, people on 5chan would supposedly find their names tied to the Vtubing account, and after both were arrested, their accounts would go inactive on the same day. Not only that, but another VTuber that did a stream with the wife released a statement saying he's distancing himself from them after the news broke. And after this, both of their Twitter accounts would be bombarded with comments regarding the situation. That is all I could find in terms of people connecting the accounts, and in my opinion, I think it's the same people, but once again, take it with a grain of salt. The husband is estimated to be released in 2044, and his wife is estimated to be released in 2039. That's only 13 years from the time of this video. So in conclusion, those are some of the most infamous VTubers. Obviously some included are significantly worse than the others I talked about, and there are probably a lot more unpleasant stories out there that I didn't talk about. But VTubing, as I said at the start, has got to the point where it's mainstream and more accessible than ever before. Meaning that even the most deplorable of people can become or claim to be a VTuber and gain an audience, which can also be said for anyone that makes content on the internet. And we are probably going to see a lot more stories like these regarding VTubers, though hopefully not on the levels as some I've mentioned. However, VTubing is still a form of media that isn't going away anytime soon, and despite the VTubers I've shown you today, there are probably 10 times more that are the very opposite, that just entertain and interact with the VTubing space in one form or another. Not every VTuber is the same as another, especially Chibidoki. That thing cannot be replicated. But I'm now going to go listen to the new Teto song on repeat. Yes, I just put you on an absolute masterpiece of a song, thank me later. And just quickly, I have to remind you that your favourite VTuber has a significant other, including the one watching this. But yep, that's all I had to say, and bye bye.